Greetings all and welcome back. So those of you in the live class or the on campus, I guess everybody in here is a live student. I do apologize for not being there today. Unfortunately, my children decided to not cooperate and catch illnesses such as strep throat from goodness knows who in school. So I will not be there, but I should be able to be available for any and all questions during the normal class time. So please take advantage of that. If you have questions, and I had a couple of people turn in materials on the course and they said, hey, I need help with this, and then you turned in the code. Well, if you're waiting till the last minute at 9:59, I probably can't help you or give you any advice. But if you ask during the week, if you're working ahead on these, we can. And one of the things I'm going to say is work through these. Work through the problems in the class. Use that skills. I saw a lot of issues as I've been grading these with things like indents, making sure that things are indented in the proper blocks. And so we'll look at that really quickly again. So anything in a loop, for example. So the other piece I saw, and most of you are doing it really, really well. So I'm going to fire up idle here really quickly. And I'm going to drag it to the window that you can see. Is most of you are doing really, really well about making sure you have lots of comments in there. There's a few of you, though, that I don't have any comments and I'm not really sure what you're even trying to do. So those comments can help you. Now that we're putting in pieces where you can assist each other in terms of some review and some critique, make sure they're in there. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of type that in there. So we're going to look at the Hangman game. And so this game is actually, you can download the entire game, but working through the code and trying to figure out what's in there is really a great way to learn. So you can download a working copy to make sure you have everything, or in the case of what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy some of these ASCII art just so we don't have to recreate them. You can do your own if you'd like to make better ASCII art or different art. But I'm going to copy some of those. So this is, the first thing we know is we're going to have some imports. And because we're going to import random, we just generally have a block up here, some kind of an imports piece. So we may put in, then we may say, well, we have some constants. And so what we're going to use in this case for some constants is we're going to use that ASCII art. And so I'm going to grab it just because I want to not have to recreate the wheel on that. And so I'm going to grab a constant that they've created. And so using triple quoted strings, so it's a lot of code, it takes up a lot of the screen real estate, but really all that is, you can see, are these, we've created a tuple. So in other words, we've used the parentheses, so we can't change these, and we wouldn't want to anyway, but then we use triple quoted strings and they created a old-fashioned hangman images. So those we can use to display and create some content on there. And we need then some words we're going to use in there. And just so we know that they're not going to change in this case, although we could certainly make our game where you could input in words and add to the list, we're going to put in a list of words. And so capitalizing again indicates to us that we're doing those as some kind of a constant. We're not going to change it. So just to shortcut and make this a little quicker, I'm going to do the copy and paste of the existing words. You can use your own words. You can do different words. So we have words we're going to put in there. Well, we also need to have a variable, and we're going to call this one max wrong. Oh, okay. So max wrong, so the number of wrong guesses, the maximum number, and this is defined by our ASCII art, how many different pieces we have. So we're going to use max underscore wrong, and we're going to set that equal to the length of hangman. So if you wanted to add additional ASCII art, you could certainly do it. So the length of hangman -1. So in other words, you can guess, if the length of Hangman is 8, you can guess 7 times on the 8th one you're going to not do well. So we have to think about a few other pieces in here. And so I'm looking on page 152. So we have our words. We know how many times that we can guess wrong. And so maybe we need to set up some of our variables. And so in this, we know we're going to use a word. And that word is equal to random.choice. And we used that before in words. So it randomly will grab a word from words. Great. We also need to have a couple of other ones. So the string so far. So this one represents then when a player has guessed a length, we get a piece of it. So we're going to put 1 dash for each letter in the word to be. So we can do it this way. So we're going to create equals and then our dash. And then as we learned earlier, we can do that times symbol. So remember times, but what we're going to take it to is the length of word. So in other words, it's going to be whatever the length of word is. Oop, and I need that lowercase, as I mistyped that. So lowercase of word. So whatever this is, it's this number times that length. That'll give us the right number of dashes to display. So we're going to set initially our wrong, and we're going to set that equal to 0 so we don't have any junk or trash in there in the game. And we're going to do used, because we want to keep track of the used variables. And my wireless keyboard and I are, apparently it needs new batteries. Connect. And type all of the words would be handy. Used is equal to, and so we can keep then a list of all of the words that we use. So we've initialized our variables. Now we're going to do a print statement. We're just going to say hello world. So hello, welcome to Hangman. So most people have got some experience with Hangman. They kind of have an idea what we're going to do here. So we're going to run most of this program inside of a loop. And most programs we do put inside of a loop. So a lot of times we even just call it that while main loop. So while wrong. So wrong has got to be less than max wrong. And I need those all capitalized. So while wrong is less than max wrong, and we have another condition, so far does not equal the word. So in other words, we're going to check both of those. And so here's our indenting. If I move back to this line, that's not part of that loop. That tells me the loop is done and we're going to move past it. But if I'm at that indent line, and some of you have run into some weird problems, and it seems to be the people on the Macs, make sure you come to the end after your colon and hit enter, and that's the indent line that we've run into. So it should be a simple tab, but occasionally it does some other things just to drive us crazy. All right, so what we're going to allow it to do is we want to, at the beginning of this, we want to print the letters that you've already used, so the ones that are wrong. So in other words, we created that list up there, and we want to be able to print them. So we're going to do a little bit of maneuvering here. So we're going to print, And what we're going to print then is hangman. So, and if I look up and I look at my variables, my constants, so hangman is equal to this. So bring it over here just so you can see it. Hangman is equal to our ASCII art. So we're going to do that based on its position then in wrong. And so you'll see here in just a second what I'm looking at. So hangman index of wrong. So in other words, we're keeping track of wrong. That's one of our sentinel values inside of this. So where you can also print out the list of the variables and what the word is so far. So I'm going to grab that really quickly just to speed this up. So we're going to print, you've used the following letters, and print out what's in used, because we're going to just keep adding those in there. And we're going to print, so far the word you've created is so far. And remember, so far will start out as dashes, and as we find letters of that word, we'll actually put them in there. So the next piece we need is we need to probably get an input from our user. So we're going to say guess. We're going to use that as our variable, equals input, enter your guess. So now we've got an input. Just so we can make sure that we're always using the same letters, because remember, uppercase and lowercase, we're going to say guess is equal to guess dot upper. And so that will convert whatever our input is into uppercase letters. And we're going to add to our append. So we're going to get a guess. We're going to convert it to uppercase. All right. So we're going to do a little error checking here. So we're going to check the guess. We've got it. So now we're going to do a little bit of an error check here. So I'm going to say while guess in used. So in other words, we look through our used list, we find it, we're going to print out you have already guessed that letter. And we could even let them know if we wanted to. We could say, because maybe they forgot, and we could put guess in there. And so now they could see you've guessed this letter. And we're going to then force them to re-input a guess. So input your guess. Well, notice what we can do up here. We can go clunk, chunk, and paste that in. Now, this is at the wrong indent. After I pasted it, we need to make sure it's in that correct input. And so this will then create a loop. If they guess this one here, we have to have that priming the pump input. And so now we can loop through here, and this can run as many times as we need to ensure that we're getting an input that isn't already used. So the next piece we need to do is then add to our used list if, so the word has to come through here, so it has to be one that a new unique one. So we're going to append it to our used. So used dot append, and we're going to pass in guess. So whatever that value of guess is, we're going to add to used. So that dot notation, those things are really handy for that. So now we need to see if our guess then is in our word that we have in our hangman. So if guess in word, so again, Python makes this part really easy. So print, we're going to say, yes, you got a piece of it. And so, yes. And so we're going to reiterate that. Your guess is in the word. So we're just going to let them know that they've got a piece of it. So now we have some other work we need to do. So we have to change so far. And so we're still in this if statement, so we still wanted this blank indication. So create or modify so far. So now we need to change that. So a couple of things. So we're going to create a variable we're just going to call new, and we're going to set that equal to just a blank. So we're going to create a for loop then to run through how long that word is. So in other words, our word, if it's 8 characters, we're going to create a loop of 8 characters. But we're just going to do it as a for loop for I in range. We're going to use the length function again. Now, we've used it enough that we could have probably used it up at the top, done it once, and created a new variable, but it executes really, really quickly, so we can get by with this. Now, we're going to add a if statement inside of that. So if guess is equal to the word at position I, then we're going to say new equals new plus guess. So in other words, we're replacing a word in there with that, or a dash, with our letter that we've just done. All right. So else, we're going to go backwards just one tab. Else new, put my colon in, new equals new plus so far at that position I. All right, so if you're curious, and we're going a little fast, make sure you look at the book on page, what are we at, 55, 153, 154, somewhere around in there, and you can get kind of some similar content. So we're going to look at this then. So now we have this loop here, but we've got this if statement still open. So this happens, all of that happens only if our letter that we guess is inside that word we've created. But we're going to come back out to our outside loop. So we're going to go back out to our if indentation. So we're at this level, and we're going to do the else clause. So else, so this happens if the letter's in there. This is what's going to happen if it's not. So else, we're going to print that letter was not in the word. All right, so now we've got a routine that we can do several different pieces. So this will run through, and as long as our max wrong and the word doesn't equal it, so we can run through there. So we've got a setup that'll work. Now we have to figure out a way we can end the game. So when we end the game, we're going to go back to our completely far left. And so we're going to say if wrong is equal to max wrong. So in other words, however many we created, so if we're at 7 and we've tried 7 turns, we've gotten kicked out of this loop. So wrong is now equal to max wrong, so it's going to kick us out of this loop. And if it's equal to it, then we know that something went badly wrong, and you can actually print out you have been hanged. And then you could print out the final character then in our ASCII art. So print hangman. And so whatever our last one is, chunk, which is now going to be equal to the number in wrong. So we could print that out. Else, we're going to print then U1. And we could print out the word was. And then we have our obligatory at the end. We almost always use this input to make sure that we hold this program open. And so, as I'm sure I have a typing error in there at some point, trying to do this really, really quickly, I'm going to run the version out of the book just to show you what it should look like, and then we'll give it a try. So it pops open in this one. It says, welcome to Hangman. And so here's our ASCII art. So you've used the following letters. So we haven't used any. And so far our word is 1, 2, 3, 4 dashes. So I'm going to enter my guess of a T. I'm going to say, oh, T's not a word. And so notice what it does. It moves it down to the next ASCII art. It changes. It says we've used the following letters T, and it still hasn't changed any of that word. So I'm going to go E. Oh, sorry, E isn't in your word. Maybe I'm going to guess S. Ooh, not doing so good. So notice we still haven't found any of those characters. And I'm going to cheat because I don't remember what the words are in this, quite frankly. Overused clam, Guam. Okay. So I'm going to put in a G just so I know it's in there and test my code. And G isn't one of them, so it must be the other 4-letter word, which was clam. Clam, okay. So we're going to guess an A. And it says, oh, yep, A is in there. Here's our 4 letters, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And notice we did that substitution. That was pretty slick. So I'm going to guess another letter, and another, and another. And notice if I catch one, it will say you've already guessed it. You've used the following letters. And I'm getting pretty close to getting hung here. So I'm going to put a P. And you've been hanged. The word was clam. All right, so fun little game. Not too hard to create. The biggest part of this game in terms of coding is actually that ASCII art. And I would just grab that to look at it. We can create our own, but it's easier in this case to just use what's already existing. So the code itself, really only a couple of loops, so make sure you've studied it, make sure you know how this works. So your assignment this week, I do need to save it. Let's just save it and see what happens. Let's Hangman, and just for giggles, let's see how badly I type something out there. I'm sure there's something wrong. So far you've used the following letters, and so far the word is a big word. So it's not Python, it's not Q. And notice if I hit the same letter, it will let me do that over and over and over and over and over and over again. We don't have any way to kick you out at a certain number, and so you could improve on that. So you could kick them out and go, well, we decided to hang you anyway if you did it more than 10 times or something. So, but your assignment this week, let's go take a look at that really quickly. So if I look at my assignments and I look at the end of week 11, so I have last year's lecture still available, so you are certainly welcome to use that or look at it if it's helpful. I have some samples that I need to post up, and then your week this week is 15 words in random order. Oh, well, that part's not hard to do. You can get 15 words, and so you're going to put them in a list or a tuple or whatever data structure you want to use. You're going to put them in that. You're going to print them out in a random order. The harder part then is you're going to add the ability of a user to add a new word to the list and then display this new list. Not only are you going to have to display that list, but you're going to have to recreate that random order. So in other words, if you add 5 words, they don't all end up at the bottom of that list and don't change. So you need to be able to recreate and add essentially 5 or 10 words. So hard coding it is probably a bad idea. Using a data structure like a list or a tuple, whatever you want to out of the skills and the abilities. So this one should be kind of interesting. We're letting you out and going to do some free range. It's also one of the smaller programs you're going to create, or it can be one of the smaller programs you're going to create. So if you're going to add things to it using those .append and other notations, I would probably really consider using a list. I wouldn't do it using a tuple. The problem is I can't change anything. I can certainly add to it, but it might be easy at some point. Then we could add a feature to substitute in words or change words. So this one shouldn't be the hardest program you've had to run. So think about it logically, write down in pseudocode, and then see if you can sit down and code it. And certainly ask questions. If you like to, look at the videos that we have available. So now we're going to branch you out a little bit. We're not going to step you through part of it. You're going to create one from your own. Make sure you put in those comments and those notations. And again, ask questions. But if you're waiting till that last minute, we can't really do much. Or I can't really get to everybody that has questions at 9:55. All right. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend. And remember, the campus will be off on Monday for spring break day. Have a great weekend, and hopefully spring really will have shown up this week.